Hello and welcome to Shining the Light on Sex Trafficking, a discussion hosted by Maegan Bell and myself, Mandee Elam, about education and prevention. Our discussions showcase various guests, survivor stories, and uncover hidden aspects of the trafficking world. It is time that we speak on this risky topic. You are listening to Heart Over Ego Radio. Thank you for tuning in. You can find all of our previous episodes on YouTube, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, all major podcast apps. Simply search Heart Over Ego Radio. Welcome, Maegan. How are you today?
Hey, Mandee, I'm doing amazing. Having a beautiful fall day up here in New England. So
beautiful. Me too. I'm actually in northern Vermont right now, and it's just been epically gorgeous. Cannot complain.
It's my favorite time of the year. It's like God painted a whole scene for us to enjoy.
It's so true. So we had lots of things that we want to talk about today during our second episode. Thanks so much to our listeners for following and supporting us. Our intention each week is just to bring discussion about this, share resources when we can, and start bringing some of this darkness to the light. So Maegan, what do you want to start chatting about today?
Yeah, so I was diving deep, doing some research on a lot of people don't really talk about what I'm going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about is elder abuse and sex trafficking. I never would have put the two together, and I was, really researching, and it's really prevalent right now in elderly communities over 60 plus.
What did you find out about that?
Yeah, so if people don't know, elder abuse is single or repeated act of an inappropriate action, which pretty much causes harm or distress to an older person. And sex trafficking, traffickers, I should say, really prey on them because they're vulnerable, and people don't really listen to them because they're like, oh, whatever, they're just making something up. It's dementia. It's something else. And the traffickers are really, using these elderly people, and they're creating elder abuse, and they're trafficking them because a lot of Johns, they don't, they have different likes, right? Some of them like young kids or teens. Some of them like 20s. Some of them like older people. There's always some kind of market, right, for the traffickers, and elderly people is one of them. I just couldn't believe it.
It's true. In my personal life, I had dated a guy who was really abusive to me. He'd been cheating on me quite a bit. And I found a lot of stuff online about people he was cheating on me with. He would meet women on Craigslist, and a lot of them were way older. And it was like the first time my mind had been exposed to that. I couldn't even believe. I was like, I didn't even know that this was like a possibility or a fetish or something. And so back at that time, before I kind of entered all the work that I do now, I remember researching it, and it was really like a popular thing that a lot of people were into or turned on by. And it's something that's absolutely an issue that is not talked about very often.
No, because when you think of sex trafficking, you see the little kid like chained up, right? Or like going from America to an international country. You don't really think of it happening in the U.S. with elderly people. When I was researching, it did say like 5 million were affected by elder abuse, not by trafficking, but this is for elder abuse. And, elder abuse is in the sex trafficking realm. I mean, it is happening. There's so many different YouTubes that I actually found, and organizations that help create awareness around elder abuse and trafficking. And it really starts with domestic violence, and this could happen in their residences. A lot of elder people, they, have nursing homes, and this happens right there. It's
Absolutely. You hear about that all the time in nursing homes. And you see that when you start with just abuse. Many people who become caretakers often have a lot of resentment and things that they have not healed within themselves. And then sometimes they take it out on their clients. And you see it all the time. Their clothes sometimes get stolen. They are sometimes used, just as punching bags or to be physically abused. And then you hear about sex sexual exploitation and actual sexual acts and rape and all kinds of things that go on within nursing homes. And then there's also just a very vulnerable population, at stake because old people are very lonely, and you hear all the time about them getting caught up in scams for money and all kinds of different things because they do want this connection. So, did you discover that in a little bit of your research, that that's how they were getting some of these older people to be trafficked?
Yeah, they're missing the intention, the emotional connection, and then a lot of like abandonment and financial exploitation like that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really hard. Did you hear about, when you were doing your research, any specific cases or stories that you wanted to share with us that stuck out?
Not anything specific. I was just doing my research on it as a whole. But did you have anything as far as, I know your background in the social field.
Well, there was one time when I was a case manager in Denver, and I worked as like a supportive housing case manager for lots of people who had been chronically homeless for a really long time and then leased up into their first apartments. And I was there to be like supportive. And there was one woman who was living on a supportive voucher, and she was an elderly woman who was very vulnerable. She was not, I don't know exactly what her diagnoses were, but she was definitely mentally ill, but she was also developmentally challenged too. So, it took her a longer time to understand things. And, this is someone who, had she had family who cared about her, probably wouldn't have been, pushed out to live independently. And there was a time where we had to intervene because there was someone who was trying to take to like marry her, and she got and become her payee and then bring her to like a cult in Texas. And she kept calling this guy her boyfriend, even though he wasn't, and he was using her apartment. And he started to have sex with her as well. And then I found out a little bit later on that he had multiple people come over to have sex with her, and she was confused and thought that, she was special. And it was like really sad to see just how manipulated that she was. And then it turned out there was like all kinds of guns and drugs and all kinds of things that he had been storing up in her apartment for, as he targeted her. And then by, the grace of God, one of the other social workers just had like a feeling one day and ended up kind of intervening with some of this stuff. And it ended up being a really big scene, but we were able to keep her from being trafficked. But then we had learned through law enforcement that there was a lot of other women with very similar characteristics that this group or gang, I guess, or whatever they were targeting quite a bit. And that there were other elders who, weren't so lucky.
Yeah, that is wild. I mean, you hear about that every day as far as like normal sex trafficking cases, but not with elderly and elder abuse situation. And I've seen even men from out of state in Maine that are coming up here with older women and in a relationship, and I can just tell maybe it's not even like a trafficking situation, but it's like, yeah, you're being used, girl. I feel like they're doing this.
Well, I think that's a nice bridge into a lot of the other things we wanted to discuss today is how do, adults especially end up being trafficked? We are putting all this light on children and how they're kidnapped or manipulated and whatnot, but we don't shine a ton of light on the adults. And you were a survivor of an adult who experienced trafficking, and there's so many others out there who do. But I think what you said is really key. It's about where that person's, maybe self-worth is, where their self-love is, their vulnerability, and how they're allowing themselves to be treated.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I was trafficked in my 20s and I was in, college, so I was a young adult. But it's really happening to all ages, from zero all the way up. As far as it happening in the community, a lot of lower income, homeless, drug users, as far as like adults that are being trafficked, because they need that drug. So they're prone to be like, oh, well, if I go here, he'll give me money or I'll make money, and then I'll have my drugs. So, or let's say I have a 2-year-old, I'm a single mom, and I'm like, in a rural community, and I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. And this guy comes along and sells me a dream. Of course, a naive woman or someone that doesn't know their self-worth would be like, okay, yeah, well, this guy can give me my daughter a great life. I don't care what I have to do, or I love him, I'm going to go with him. And then that's how adults can get in this kind of situation.
Absolutely. I would say, would you almost see it pair with, financial distress? There's
Yeah.
almost always some sort of trade, or people feel lost or stuck or like they have no other way. And then, this option comes along to make some easy money, and they don't often realize what those doors could open up.
Yeah, I follow this lady named Rebecca Bender. She's a survivor as well, and she has a podcast and a book and such. And she was saying that a lot of traffickers are trying to get their old girls back right now because of COVID. They're using this time to gain profit. Um, like, oh, don't you miss me? Come back. You want money. You want me. Da, da, da. Like they're trying to get them back into the game because of this hardship that we're facing right now. And that's adults, like that's not obviously children that are being trafficked. These are adults that were previously trafficked, survivors of trafficking, and now their traffickers are trying to get them back into the industry or the game or whatever you want to call it. And I've seen that. I thought that was a really interesting read. Thankfully mine, he hasn't contacted me, knock on wood, but you never know.
You never know. And that's the thing. It does seem like it often comes down. We talk about this self-worth piece, which it's a very complicated piece. And we've had collectively a lot of broken people raising a lot of broken people. And there's a lot of abuse and wounds and things that have just kept compounding over generationally. And so, sometimes the way people grow up, whether, like Maegan said, they grew up maybe in low income or in an abusive household, or they grew up in a place where, they weren't able to develop a lot of self-worth and understanding, then that often makes them vulnerable to these situations.
Yeah.
So it's hard. There's a lot of layers to this. So, as we talk about these and as people listen, we want everyone to know that at any point, there is hope and there is light and there is a chance to start over. We're going to be doing some work on like really bringing resources and whatnot for people who do feel, Maegan, do you know of anything where when people do feel like they need support getting out of trafficking or help getting out of that, or an alternative to like stay away from it? Do you know of any of those kind of resources yet?
Yeah, so I actually did a program with an organization based out of LA and New York City called Treasures, and they're all about, so they're survivor led. She's a survivor. Her name is Harmony Grillo, and I've been following her for a long time. And she helps survivors find their lane, helps them share their story, and really is an understanding soul. She's faith based as well, which is great. So that's Treasures. When you're on Instagram, it's not going to be just the Treasures. I believe she added like an LLC or something. Let me just triple check that for you. But yeah, that's an amazing resource to have. Treasures.nyc is hers. And their mission is to reach and equip women in the sex industry and victims of sex trafficking to live healthy, flourishing lives. She's a great one. And yeah. It has like a workbook and the DVD series, and it really helped me. And it was like probably 4 years ago before you and I started working together. And I did that, or during the time that we worked together. We've been working together for a long time. But
that's fantastic, though. I love that. And I love like workbook things. Is that something you can easily download to your phone? Like if somebody's trying to, get some help, but doesn't have a ton of resources, but maybe has a phone.
Yeah, so this one was an actual workbook. I'm not sure if she has a digital copy because everything's digital now. When I did it, it was an actual workbook that she sent me. And she does have, options as far as like safe houses in the LA region. So if anyone is listening from LA, her name is Harmony Grillo. She's great.
Fantastic. Maegan, did you have any other topics that you wanted to talk about as far as young adults getting swept up in trafficking?
Yeah, so I did want to, I always want to put this in there. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is 1-888-373-7888. You can get help and get connected to a service provider in your area. You can also report a tip of any potential like sex trafficking activity, but obviously keep the victims safe. Don't approach them, but if you feel like you see something, say something. As they say in New York PD, if you see something, say something. So that's
I kind
definitely if
of
you
like
see.
that because,
Yeah.
yeah, we as a society, we've really gotten around to like really keeping, our eyes and ears shut to what's happening outside of us. And it's like
Yeah.
the more we've advanced as a society and the more we've brought in more technology, the further we get apart from kind of the human aspect of what's happening.
Yeah, I was actually I
Get
was at a
involved as
meeting
much
today.
anymore and don't want to intervene when they hear something.
Sorry, I broke up a little bit. I didn't hear the last thing that you said.
That's okay. Go ahead.
So I was going to say during the meeting that I was at today, they actually created this barcode, and it was so smart, and I'm so happy that I was linked with them. So they created this barcode where it has their hotline on it, and a lot of victims they can't tell you that they're victims because they're afraid. So they're making this in different sizes, so they can put a barcode. If you look at your water bottle, you have a barcode on your water bottle. There could be a barcode in your shoe. There could be like barcodes anywhere. So like their idea was like using a sticker with their number on the bottom of the barcode. So if someone needed help and they could do it, secretly. And I loved that idea.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
That would be
I
really
loved
cool.
like yeah. They showed me the sticker and everything. It was really cool.
Mm. It's got my wheels spinning now.
Does
Oh.
it? I can tell.
Well, yeah, because I was thinking about it and I'm like, well, how would they get it to them? And then yeah, if your abuser found it, what would you do about it? But I really like that too because there's so many layers to all of this trafficking, and there are really extreme cases and there are lighter cases too. Whereas if, you just start getting involved with it a little bit, then maybe there's some chances to dip out. And I see that barcode thing maybe really helping people before they get caught up in a really, a much more serious situation or get completely taken away.
Yeah, what I envisioned when they showed it to me was like someone in McDonald's, and you could tell that they're being trafficked, and you're like, "Oh, did you drop this? Like, this is your water bottle," and like putting that on there. Like maybe they won't even know, the trafficker wouldn't see that, or if you're on like an airplane, a stewardess could do that. Something, little things just to make them feel like they can get help, because a lot of them feel like they can't, and they're not worthy for help. And just having someone reach out and love them, uh, showing them that they're worthy and that they can get out, really can make a difference. And it would have for me if someone did that for me.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And that's what everybody just wants to be seen and heard and know that they're worthy and know that, it's okay. And often, like we were saying earlier, people get caught up in trafficking or abusive situations because they don't feel like there's anywhere else to turn or like they have any other options. So the more we can talk about this, the more we can let people know it's okay to discuss it and that there are resources out there, I think the better.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Well, Maegan, do you have any other final remarks today, or maybe some advice for young adults or adults in general who are involved in this and are hoping to find a way out?
Yeah, so if you are being trafficked, just know that there is a way out, and that when you're ready, we're ready for you, and that we're here to support you, that you're valued, you're purposed, you're blessed, and you are worthy of leaving the situation. Never forget that.
Absolutely. And if you want some support or if you want to talk to Maegan or I, you can reach out to us via Heart Over Ego Radio. You can reach out to us on our Facebook page, Shining the Light on Sex Trafficking. You can email us at heartoverego@gmail.com. We're always happy to hold space and share resources and encourage self-love and empowerment and freedom. Maegan, thank you so much for spending time and holding space about this today and shining the light on sex trafficking.
Thank you so much, Mandee. You have a blessed day, okay?
You as well. Thanks to all of our listeners. Please give us a like, a follow. You can find new episodes of Heart Over Ego Radio shows on any major podcast app as well as YouTube. Please follow us on Instagram. Please follow us on Facebook. We love building community with you. And we have a whole Heart Over Ego community on Facebook that's growing as well. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.